Well, what we've got today is a big, beautiful cherry burl. It measures about 16 inches this way and about 9 inches width. It's very dry. It's been sitting for the better part of 20 years, untouched, and today we're going to make something nice out of this. I'm going to trim a little bit off this side here, but I'm going to try to keep this as natural as I can. So anyway, stand by, let's get to turning.
So the first thing I need to do is get this thing between centers. I use a small Forstner bit. I need to get down past that bark so I've got some good solid wood to make this thing secure and safe, because this was kind of a chunky, wobbly burl for sure. Wasn't sure if it was gonna shake the whole machine apart, so going good. Gonna start getting past that bark nice and slow. See what's underneath and kind of start deciding what shape I want to start leaning this piece toward. It's crazy that I was getting even though this is just bark mostly, I'm getting lots and lots of dust. This piece was so dry. The gentleman I got it from said it had been sitting in his shed for almost 20 years or 20 years or more. And boy, oh boy, he wasn't lying. Very dry, dusty piece. Flattening off the bottom, trying to set up my tenon and foot so I can turn this around and get it in a chuck so it's a little bit more stable. Really deciding if I'm going to leave it oblong at this point, and that's a lot of natural bark, and maybe give it a bowl shape, but keep the wings. Again, at this point I'm still just deciding. For as dry as it was, this was a very easy turn, to be honest. The wood was a pleasure to work with. This is my second time turning a cherry burl. I made the decision at this point to part off the wings and give this a little bit more of a traditional bowl shape, because the wings itself were very fragile, loose, lots of bark, and I thought, the pretty figured burl wood is what I wanted to focus on, so don't hate me. That's what I decided to do. We're going to start giving it some sanding now, getting ready to turn it around. I always sand to about 400 grit, and then I kind of do my standby, which is very fine steel wool, medium Scotch pad, and a very fine Scotch pad. And it gives a real nice, shiny, smooth surface. We'll get this turned around in the chuck and start flattening the top, and I can start moving toward the hollowing process. Very wobbly here, but it eventually cooperated. There was that really good sized void in the front. It was kind of throwing me off as to where do I go in, how do I not take a big chunk out accidentally or get a catch. So it was more just take a little look, take a little look, and see where the piece of wood wanted to go. I started noticing that there were some very loose bits of the bark, so I decided to use some CA to stabilize that a bit more, because I definitely wanted to keep that as part of the rim. Now I'm starting to get down, and I always want to know where my depth is going to be so I don't mess up and make the bottom too shallow, because I always want to leave a little bit of room to drill out for my branding emblem on the bottom. So I try to leave the bottom a little thicker so it gives me some extra wiggle room to do that. Again, even as dry as this piece of wood was, it really cooperated well and was very pleasant to turn, aside from all the dust. Definitely had my respirator on with filtration, not just for the sanding. I used a skew on the inside because that edge was so darn sharp. And I thought, that's not pleasant to pick up and touch. So rounded that a little bit, like that a lot more. And now we're going to set up and start doing some sanding. It'll be very much the same process, sand up to about 400 grit. And I'll use the fine steel wool, medium Scotch pad, fine Scotch pad. A lot of times I'll use a sanding paste, but because of all the voids and everything, it would just get stuck into everything, so I did not do that. I'll use a jam chuck, or excuse me, I'll use a vacuum chuck as a jam chuck. I find that if it's possible, I try to use that because it gives a lot of stability instead of a piece of wood, because it's actually mounted to the lathe. And I'll get rid of that nub when I go to the drill press to use a Forstner bit to drill out my branding emblem. I do like the Brad's tongue wax. Terrific product. Let it sit for about 20-30 minutes before you take it off. Wipe off the excess. It's beautiful. You can do more than one coat, obviously, but at this point I'm just kind of staring at the grain and the figuring of this burl. It was so pretty to me. I really tend to like rustic, I think, and pieces that have natural voids and inclusions. I do fill with some pieces, but when I have a piece like this that just has so much character, I really kind of just tend to leave it alone. Again, personal preference. I do these things because I like them. And obviously it's, again, preference of mine. Nice rustic cherry burl bowl, suitable for the table or countertop. Thank you so much for watching, guys. See you again soon.
Well, today I've got a nice, beautiful, free block of mystery wood from my local mantle shop. I really encourage everybody to find a mantle shop where you live and be friends with them and go over and see what they're throwing away as cutoffs in their pile. Gonna turn this into something pretty today, and I'm really excited. Anyway, here we go.
Using my high-tech template, I'm going to get the corners gone and put a faceplate on for some good control and stability. I'll start roughing the outside corners just to see if I can get it in balance a little bit better and start my shaping. This wood was very dry and old. I noticed some cracks, but not going to really bother me until I really get into it. I'm going to start flattening the bottom now and seeing what it looks like underneath. I'll make a little rough area for the tenon and for what will be my foot and get those nice and cleaned up. Wanted to start working on the outside a little bit and getting rid of some of the rougher bits. Starting to see the shape come in a little bit more, or at least at this point what I think I'm going to want the shape to be, because I never really plan it out. I'm starting to realize now that this is pine. I didn't know what it was before, and that it has some beautiful figure to it. I'm going to do some sanding and get it buffed and cleaned. I use a very fine steel wool and 2 different grades of Scotch pad to get a really nice surface before I do any finish oiling or anything like that. Looking very pretty and shiny without putting any product on. So I know I've got a good smooth surface. I love pure beeswax. It's about as natural and food safe as it gets. You put a little on, put the speed up so you get some good heat and friction, and it just melts down onto the wood and gives a really pretty shiny finish. We're going to turn this around, get that faceplate off, and start working on the inside. Going to flatten out the the top. Get this thing nice and true and start my hollowing process. I decided to go ahead and use a Forstner bit to drill out the center and set my depth that way. Also saved me some time with a lot of hollowing because this is a pretty decent size and heavy piece of wood. This wood turned very easily, and this is where the title of the video kind of came to me, is why don't people turn pine more often? I know that we typically overlook it as wood turners, but if you get a nice piece and it's not full of bug holes and that sort of thing, it can really be quite lovely. A lot of times I'll do my finish inside work with the carbide tool and my scraper, just to get rid of any tool marks and to really give me a nice surface to reduce my sanding. Wanted to clean up the very top edge a little bit before I moved on to some sanding. And I'm going to end up repeating the same process I did on the outside. Very fine steel wool, medium Scotch pad, and a very fine Scotch pad to give me a real nice surface before I put on my beeswax. Turn up the speed, give it a little pressure, and let the heat kind of break down that beeswax. It gives it a really beautiful shine. And again, food safe, excellent. So we'll get this off now and start working on removing that tenon. That'll be next. I use vacuum chuck as a jam chuck because it fits right on the inside of this bowl nicely and gives it some really good stability. I went to the drill press and drilled out the right size for my branding token, and we'll attach that now. CA glue, and I spray the bottom of the wood token so it adheres right away. And there you have it, folks. Really hope you liked it, and I hope you give some pine a chance, because I think it's worth it. Beautiful stuff. Well, today I'm looking forward to this. Today we're going to be working with a beautiful walnut burl. This came off a big log, and the gentleman that milled it did not want the burl growth, and of course I was happy to have it. Not exactly sure what kind of shape we're going to take today, but I'm thinking it's going to be beautiful. So first order of business is get this bark off. really see what's underneath and what I'll be working with. I'd never actually done this before, so many portions of working with this piece are a first. Cleaned up very nicely. Lots of pointy bits and lots of intimidating little ridges and valleys, and yeah, but exciting to be working with a piece of wood like this. Got to get this thing mounted and faceplate for sure, so I've got the maximum stability and safety working with this piece. Getting this put onto the lathe and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it. Caption says it all. I'm thinking, boy oh boy, those little spikes are very sharp and pointy. What did I get myself into? At the same time, kind of can't wait. Tailstock support for sure, and going to start rounding the bottom. I always knew that this was going to be the bottom of the piece because the burl figuring went all the way through, so I wasn't worried about losing any of that beautiful grain and figuring. This piece really was not difficult to work with. It was just taking my time, going slow, checking, and seeing where I was along the way. Certainly not rushing anything. I think at this point, I'm kind of thinking I need to start establishing some kind of a foot and tenon and getting this thing, again, more in round. Definitely decided on a tenon for when I turn it around into the chuck. The wood was a little bit punky, and realizing that was going to be the only thing holding this thing on at some point, I enforced it with some CA glue just to be on the safe side. I'm going to start getting a little bit more of the shape now, seeing how much I can put into it as far as a bowl shape without compromising the wings that I really wanted to leave as natural looking as I could. So a lot of stopping and checking. I will say that it was distracting because every time I stopped, I just wanted to kind of stare at the figuring and it was a little mesmerizing, and I kept thinking to myself, I need to get back to this and finish. But really, really beautiful. I'd never worked with a piece of wood like this. Getting a little bit more of bowl shape that I think I'm going to be going for, and trying to kind of define that shape now. Most of the work I'm doing, I'm using a 1/2-inch bowl gouge. I'm real comfortable with that tool for shear scraping and for getting bulk off. There was one wing that was cut straight and it was longer than the other, and so I turned with a carbide tool to bring it down a little bit smoother, knowing that it wasn't going to be natural anyway. So I'm going to start doing some initial sanding and finished with steel wool and Scotch pads to give it a real nice smooth feel and look. Time to get this turned around and put on a chuck and start working on the top and the hollowing. Flattening out was not super difficult. Again, just took a lot of patience to go very slowly, especially when I'm working out toward the ends of the wings. It was a little unnerving. Again, I've never done that before. You'll see that in a moment. Watching the dark brown shavings come out when I was starting to hollow the inside was really something. Marking out where I think I should not go beyond, because I don't want to make those wings on the sides compromised and weak. So how much bowl can I get away with? This is where I really took my time and went slow and flattened out those wings in toward the bowl. I also had decided that I wanted to put some kind of a rim around the bowl itself, and you'll see that in just a moment. Stop, check, make sure I haven't gone too far, and I still have some wings on the edges and the sides. So a little shear scraping, 1/2-inch bowl gouge to take out some of the tool marks and also refine those wings so they're nice and flat. So I'm going to go ahead and start going deeper into the bowl and hollowing out at this point. Again, trusty 1/2-inch bowl gouge. I took away the tailstock support because at some point you have to. It was a little unnerving, I got to be honest with you, going, holy smokes, I hope that tenon holds up. My goal was to use a lot of pressure straight in toward the chuck and not side to side, because then it would reduce my risk of this thing coming off, because if it did, it would be probably disastrous. Setting my depth now and making sure I don't go too deep. I want to make sure that the bottom isn't too thin and I have room to use a drill press and put in my little branding emblem at the end. So again, taking my time, hollowing out, and to be honest, just really enjoying this turn from start to finish. It was really a pleasure. Nice big void in here. Decided to clean it out a bit, and I do have a tendency to leave pieces with natural inclusions and voids unless I'm really trying to make something, totally smooth. I really tend to like that. So it didn't bother me. We'll see what it's going to be when all is said and done, is kind of my attitude. But I rather like seeing the natural character of pieces of wood and what they decide they're going to be. Got my depth now, and I'm just trying to really get a nice smooth bowl feel. I'm also going to take a skew and I'm going to kind of round the edges on that rim, because they were particularly sharp, and with the little voids and everything, it would be uncomfortable if it got picked up wrong. I reinforced with a little CA glue just to be on the safe side, because it was feeling a little loose. But it seemed like that's all it took, was just a little bit. Going to run through with my handy dandy my fine steel wool medium Scotch pad and fine Scotch pad to give me a nice smooth feel. It definitely was not going to put any sanding paste on because it would get stuck up in all the inclusions. I use a vacuum chuck as a jam chuck. It gives a lot of good stability when I'm taking off the tenon and I have to turn it around to do that. Need to make sure that this foot in the bottom area is definitely concaved, so when it's sitting, it's going to sit flat on its foot edges. So that's what I'm going to start working on here. It was a bit convex, so I had to really kind of change the whole shape of it, but not a big deal. Not worried about that nub because that's going to come off the drill press when I drill out for my branding emblem at the end. So it's kind of nice to do it that way because I can leave that tailstock support up the whole time and not feel like I'm obligated to get rid of that. Little finish sanding and polishing with the Scotch pads, and ready to put a little bit of, this is Brad's tongue oil. Really like this product. I do have a tendency to only put one coat on. I let it sit for a good 30 minutes or so before I wipe off the excess because I tend to just prefer a little bit more of natural and almost matte kind of look when all is said and done. I love seeing pieces that are nice and shiny, but this seemed, with all the voids and inclusions, this seemed like something that needed to be a little bit more on the rustic side and a little bit more natural. Obviously these oils and that sort of thing will really bring out the colors and to be able to see the grain and figure, which of course I definitely wanted to see, but definitely was not going for something shiny. Again, this sits for about 20 to 30 minutes and then just paper towel off the excess. And that's usually my finished look. This piece did drink up a lot of the oil, it seemed like. I had to put a good amount on, and it seemed like it was a bit thirsty, but that's okay. And obviously I won't put any of that oil into the center so I can glue in the branding emblem. Really appreciate everybody watching, taking your time to do so. The support for the channel, especially being brand new, is much appreciated. Time to put the my little branding emblem in there. Little CA glue, and then I spray the activator on the back of the wood emblem. And that's all she wrote. Kept staring at the grain and the figuring on this Burl. It was just amazing to me. Again, thank you so much for watching, and please consider subscribing for more videos. Take care. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back again. Well, today this is going to be kind of fun. I have this very nice piece of Ambrosia maple. It's measuring probably about, I think it was about 16 inches across by 16 inches across. The ends are about 3 inches thick. And the nice thing, aside from that nice spalting you see there, is that along the middle and the edges you'll see are some nice little burls, and I'm really hoping to see some of that feature as I get into this piece. I think this is going to lend itself a little bit more to obviously a nice platter, so I'm going to kind of go that direction. Going to get this kind of mapped out and trimmed up a little bit so we can get it on the lathe and get rolling. Faceplate definitely the way to go in my opinion on this, so we can keep things nice and safe and have this thing very secure. Going to try to just get it into round. This is obviously going to be my bottom. Going over the tops of those little burl pieces or bits, and the tips, just had to make sure I went nice and slow, and everything should be fine. So this piece came off of, it was part of about a 6-foot cap that got milled off of an Ambrosia maple log, of which the gentleman milling it did not want the cap. And I thought, well, that's about 3 inches thick. I'm sure I can do something with that. One of these pieces actually was sent to my mom and it's one of her favorite pieces. So I thought I would try to, which I never put that on video, but I thought I would do another and do a slightly different shape this time, and obviously see if I can improve upon it. Needed to establish a good tenon and a foot, and we're going to start working on getting the outside edge nice and trued up also. I think when this thing was all the way done, it worked out to be about 14 inches across, which is, in my opinion, a nice respectable size. The grain and the figuring on the last piece I did out of this slab and this one was just really pretty. Had some really nice faulting and good character to it. As I kind of get the outside shape sort of going the way I was intending, like with many of my projects, I decide to change things up a little bit. So I'm going to change the exterior shape a little bit. I kind of cut it in toward the rim and gave it a little bit more oomph, if you will. Little sanding on here to be able to get the outside finished here, or the bottom side finished, so I can get it turned around and start hollowing. I really like on smooth wood, use the fine steel wool and the Scotch pads before I do any kind of sanding paste or anything like that. Looking very nice. Going to use some Axe abrasive paste. Not sponsored by them, just like the product, and good bang for the buck economically. I send you a lot for a little. Also kind of richens up the color of any of the wood that you tend to work with as well. Super pretty, lots of chatoyance to this wood. So if you are liking this kind of content, best way you guys can support me for free is to hit that notification bell. It helps my meager little channel more than you know. And please leave comments. I really love reading them all. And suggestions from people who are a lot more experienced than me are, and even those who are not, are more than welcome. The top part of this was actually pretty true because, again, it came off of a mill. But we're going to go ahead and flatten it out a little bit and make sure everything is nice and true. Kind of checking now, and I'm noticing some of the cracks that are here, and I'm kind of hoping, especially that one, that I'll be able to turn past it. We'll see. Again, these sorts of things don't really bother me too much usually because it always tends to work out, but we'll find out. I kind of marked off for that dark line where I kind of wanted to start cutting in, but again, like many of my projects, I ended up changing it a little bit more. Instead of it being a little bit more of an abrupt line, I think you'll see I change it up some. If you get your hands on some Ambrosia maple, I think you will be very happy when you work with it. It's a terrific wood. It turns very well. Oh, I did have a little bug damage. Yay. And cooperates real well. No issues. It's a nice hardwood. This is particularly dry, but really, really fun to work with. all that tear out that we see in the middle, again, I'm not too concerned with that, because as I start doing finishing cuts and getting down to what will be my depth, I'm fairly sure I'll be able to smooth that out and make it look nice. So this is where I kind of changed that transition to be a little bit more of a smoother transition. I think I was going for a little bit closer to what I had done on the outside, and it just seemed to be a little bit more attractive to the eye, and I was liking it, so kind of kept going. Checking my thinness or thickness of those walls. I mean, I could see it, but sometimes the sound is even more helpful. Like always, I never really show how much I go back and sharpen. I did have to sharpen a decent amount with this piece, just to keep giving myself some clean cuts and not create more tear out. But again, nothing more than usual, to be truthful, of a nice hardwood. Working now with this negative rake scraper to see if I can really kind of clean things up and give a nice smooth surface and get rid of a lot of those tool marks. Time to get a little sandpaper on it and see if we can start getting more to a finished piece. This is a little bit of alcohol just to get rid of all the dust and kind of pop those fibers up a little bit more before we do anything else. Also gives us a nice first look at the grain. Those spalting lines running through there are so cool. Putting some Axe abrasive paste on now to see if we can give a little bit more of a smoother surface. Again, just kind of keep wiping after you've kind of worked it in a little bit and let it break down till you don't see any product on there at all. This is the finishing polish from Axe. Gives a really nice shine, and I kind of feel like that little container is going to last me about 5 years because it doesn't take much. Turn the speed up a little bit. Don't press too much because you just want it to kind of warm up a little bit. Beautiful piece of wood. I always feel really fortunate when I kind of get into something and there's something really beautiful inside. Time to get that tenon gone. And again, if you haven't seen it before, I use a vacuum chuck as a jam chuck because they're nice and flat and they're mounted right to my headstock, so I don't have to worry about truing them up or anything. And especially if you've got a little bit of a flat surface like this larger platter, it sits right on there and holds it very, very steady. This base, I had not really concaved it well enough when I set the original foot, so I had to kind of cut it in a little bit more, as you see me doing here, so it was definitely nice and concaved and would sit on the outside edges of the foot and not sit in the center and wobble. We'll do a little sandpaper to kind of clean things up and get it ready for finish like the rest. And then the last thing we'll do is we'll get rid of that little nub. I'm just going to sand that off. So again, this piece ended up being about 13 inches across and about 2 3/4 inches deep. I was able to save a pretty good amount of that piece and not turn away a lot of size. Very pleased with how it came out. Going to put a little bit of Danish oil on the platter to seal it up nicely and give it a nice little shine look. Make sure you stay tuned for the after pics. Those are coming up in just a moment. And again, any comments, any suggestions, please offer those up. I really enjoy reading those, and I really appreciate all the support. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you next time. Well, hey there everyone, welcome back again. Today we've got a nice black walnut log. This came from a tree on my property that came down during a big storm several months back, so this is still pretty green. I've never turned green walnut before, so this will be a little bit of a first, but it's very pretty, and I thought, well, I'm sure we can be patient and make something nice out of this. So that's what we're going to try to do. Wanted to establish a tenon right away, and in case I wanted to flip it around, didn't do that right away, but that was the first order of business. Part of me was very curious how this would turn also because, again, I've never done it before and I have so much of it on the property. I was thinking, well, I'll try something, and now I've got plenty of wood to do more stuff. Starting out mostly with a spindle roughing gouge, and we're going to get a good majority of this log down to a nice smooth cylinder shape, but not all of it, as you'll see, and I've got a plan for the rest as we move forward. Lots and lots of sapwood on this walnut log, so I'm not really concerned about how much there is. I've got a shape in mind, and the heartwood will present itself as it presents itself. Back to the trusty 1/2-inch bull gouge, and looking to start establishing the shape that at least I'm picturing in my mind. I was very pleased to see how easily this wood turned. Most green woods do, but I thought for some reason that walnut was going to be a lot harder, and it wasn't. I'm using a flat carbide tip to really kind of take that bottom shape down a bit more. I'll start working on the top shape. Using a skew to just kind of smooth things out, get a little bit more of a round radius on this portion of the piece, and try to finalize my shape here. Whole time I'm turning this, I'm kind of thinking, boy, I wonder how this is actually going to sand. Will it actually sand? Being not terribly, terribly wet. I've had it drying out in a whole bunch of shavings for about 4 months or so, but still a lot of moisture to the piece. About to find out. We'll get a little sandpaper on it and see how it starts to finish up. To my surprise, it seemed to sand down very nicely. When I hit that sapwood, it seemed like a whole lot of material was coming off, even if I was using the finer grits, so it was very interesting. So time to get this turned around and put in the chuck and see if we can open up the top a little bit and start finishing this piece off. Needed to definitely flatten out the very top before we used a Forstner bit to hollow out a little bit. This is going to be a nice little vase, but it's not going to be super, super deep. I want this to be a little bottom heavy. Moisture content in the wood, especially in the middle of that heartwood, did not like that Forstner bit too much. It's getting pretty hot in there, as you can see from the steam. But nice and slow, just taking my time. We'll just make this rim, the inside rim, a little softer and open it up just a little wider. But I'm going to keep the interior where I used the Forstner bit a little more narrow. The whole idea would be to, this would be for dried flowers or something like that. Not going to put a glass tube or anything like that in there. This wood is probably going to be moving a little bit, so I don't think that would be appropriate for this. A few cracks were presenting itself around the rim. They were there already because essentially the center is the pith, and but some of this was that it was cracking a little bit as I was turning. I'm going to try to smooth it up as nicely as we can. Little fine steel wool, medium Scotch pad, and fine Scotch pad. To my surprise, it came out really, really pretty, and that's without any product or anything. Of course, walnut is pretty darn beautiful. Can't really screw that up too much. We're going to use a little bit of the Axe abrasive paste on here to get a little bit finer finish and to richen up the grain color as it does. Keep buffing that off until you don't see anything left on your paper towel. Beautiful grain in the walnut. Now it's time to part off, and I'm only going to leave a little bit of that live edge on the bottom just to give it a little bit of a different look. All finished on the top and very rustic and natural on the bottom. Time to get a little bit of the tung oil on there and see what this thing is really made of. If you've enjoyed the video or the content, consider subscribing if you would. Smash that notification bell so you know when new videos are coming out. It doesn't cost a penny and it means a lot to the growth of the channel and support. But regardless, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch. Please leave a comment. I'm really interested in people's comments about the design and what they thought of it, whether it's positive or negative, and maybe what you would have done differently. I really like reading those, and I try to comment back for every comment left, and I really do appreciate those. This will stay on for about 20 minutes or so before I wipe it off, and might end up doing another coat a little bit later. But it makes a world of difference, just the one right off the bat. Time to put a little branding emblem on. I didn't show you the drill press portion. Figure everybody knows how those work. Stick around for the after picks. Those are coming up next. And again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support. I will see you again next time. Hey there everyone, welcome back. So in the 11 months that I've been wood turning, I've never really looked at hickory or been too interested in it until I found this piece, again at my local mantle shop. It was in their trash pile, and the figuring and how interesting it was, I really just wanted to give it a try. So you'll see the mantle shop, they tried some stain on it, and this was the cutoff piece that they obviously didn't use. There's a lot of checking, there's some crazy voids, and some bark inclusions right there, but not great for a finished mantle, but really great possibly for a wood turner. So this is what we're going to try today, and see if we can get this on the lathe and find out what's inside. Really could have taken off the corners first on the bandsaw, but I didn't know exactly what kind of shape I was going to take, so I thought I would just move slowly and kind of see what this piece wanted to be. Hickory is a very hard wood. This particular piece is very dry. Don't know how long it had been sitting before it got tossed, but the moisture content was really low. This piece measured about 14 inches across squared. We'll see what kind of a size bowl we can get out of it. Because of those inclusions and everything, I really think we're going to have to take it down a little smaller, but we'll see. We'll see. To be truthful too, I did not exactly know what this wood was. I had to talk to a couple friends with a lot more experience than me and show them the wood as I was getting ready to turn it, and they were the ones that helped me identify it because, again, I'm pretty green at this wood turning. Anyway, they were able to help me identify it, and said conclusively, yeah, this is hickory. Hickory is used a lot, as you probably know, in smoking, like wood smokers. Got a really great smoky aroma to it. Nothing like that came out in the turning. Again, I think a lot of this was because it was very dry. Maybe if it were wet. So we're trying to get a little bit of a shape going now, and seeing where I need to bring it in. These large voids and inclusions are really, I think, going to dictate a lot of the design. Whenever I have a piece like this, I tend to just go slow, stop and evaluate, and see what I kind of need to do. And that in itself sort of dictates the shape that I end up with many, many times. Some really good cracks. I don't know if that's going to be an issue. That one's a little concerning. Those bark inclusions, some bug damage. We got all kinds of chaos going on here. But I've got a nice sturdy faceplate on, so I'm just going to keep whittling away and see what I need to do to make this into something nice. Going to try to get that tenon established so we can ultimately get this turned around and have it held securely in the chuck. Nice flat foot. Yeah, that void right there, not sure. We're going to get some sandpaper on this now and start smoothing it out a bit. And I think we'll see what we need to do or can do with all those voids once we get it hollowed out. This is just a little bit of alcohol to get rid of all the dust and get the grain standing up a little bit better. The grain on this hickory was gorgeous already. Super cool. Little fine steel wool and the medium Scotch pad and fine Scotch pad to kind of burnish a smooth surface onto this before we do any kind of sanding paste or anything like that. Again, I don't know if this is the right way to do it. It's just the way that I've done it a lot, and it seems to work out. If anybody has any comments about doing things in probably the correct order, I would really appreciate that, because again, I'm still pretty new at this. We'll get this faceplate off and we'll turn it around and start hollowing. So yeah, so this is a little concerning, and again, one of the reasons they probably threw it out, but still might work for us. Going to try to get rid of some of that center bulk with a Forstner bit and give myself a little guide to start the hollowing process. Yeah, this is starting to concern me a little bit at this point. I don't know how deep that's going to go. According to the center where the Forstner bit went in, it didn't go in too deep, but you just don't know. And the last thing I want this thing doing is flying apart on me as it's moving about 1,000 RPM. So starting to really kind of consider what I want to do with that. So after really thinking about this and trying to figure out whether it was safe to keep spinning this around really quickly with my body really close, I decided to go a little bit of a safer route. So I'm going to cast this in some epoxy resin and let it really get in there and fill all those cracks, those voids as far as they go. Plus I really kind of feel like that it will give the piece some good features because there are some side voids. Maybe I'll get a couple windows out of it. We'll see. Yes, I did get in trouble for doing epoxy on my wife's quartz countertops and using one of her old baking sheets. So if that's you too, you're not the only one. So what I used on the outside to hold this as a mold was if you just go to a dollar store and pick up some of their summer picnic placemats, you can get them for $1 a piece, and I find that they will hold the resin. They're firm enough to hold epoxy where you want it, but they're pliable enough to be able to shape around. Anyway, that's what I used, and I did not put any kind of mold release or anything, so basically I had to turn it all off. At this point, I'm just trying to start getting that center portion of epoxy, which basically is going to get all turned away, out, and get the bowl back into its original shape again, and start hollowing down. So this was a bit of a long process, again, because it's a pretty chunky piece of hickory, and it's a hard wood. But, you know, again, part of the fun is just taking your time and chipping away at it. And anyway, that's what I enjoy. This is my little high-tech depth finder gauge. Works really well. Starting to get down to where we want to go, and as it turns out, of course I didn't know, I was able to turn past those big bark inclusion voids, but it still left some really nice features on the inside and outside walls, which you'll see in the after pics and as we move forward. So this was a real fun project in general. I really enjoyed turning the hickory. In fact, since the editing of this video, I've already picked up a couple more pieces out of the trash pile at the same mantle shop. So there'll be some other ones coming. But I had never considered, I don't know why, I always looked at other wood species, but never really looked at hickory. But boy, oh boy, this was nice. I also have some really nice hickory trees on my property. Not that I want to cut down trees to do wood turning, but if they ever need to go or fall from a storm, I will certainly save the wood. Some of the little voids there in the casting process just needed to fill in with some CA glue. We'll get some sandpaper again on the outside because I had to turn away a lot of the resin that was there, and start finishing the bowl up. I take everything to about a 400 grit, and then I'll burnish it with the Scotch pads and everything. This is again a little bit more alcohol, just to before I do any of that, to clean off the dust and get the fiber standing up well. This is the Axe abrasive paste. I like this product a lot. You'll notice I left that little bit of epoxy resin rim on the top, so I don't know. I liked it and decided to leave it on there. I'm still kind of, to be quite honest, kicking around whether that was a good idea or not, so leave a comment and let me know what you think. We'll get that tenon gone now and be able to finish it up. I'll take this down to just a little bit of a nub, and if you've seen my other videos, a lot of times what I'll do is just leave the nub on there, and I'll take it off at the drill press, and I drill out just the right size for my branding emblem, so I don't have to take that thing off entirely, and it gives me a nice space to put the emblem on. Works out great. Just a little CA glue, and we will get the emblem on and put a little Danish oil on it after we're done too. Again, not sure if I'm even supposed to do that. It seems to work out well, and I really welcome any comments as far as people with a lot more experience than me telling me the order to do things. The after pics are going to be coming up in just a moment, and please leave your comments, tell me your thoughts, and if you've turned hickory and if this is typical or not. If this is interesting to you, please hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you know when these videos are coming out, and all the support is super, super appreciated. Project was a lot of fun, came out great. I did get a couple nice little windows, and I don't know, to me just made it a little bit more interesting. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Hello there, welcome back. I turned a cherry burl about 3 months ago. It was smaller than this one, and in those 3 months, that video has gotten over 300,000 views, which completely blows my mind, by the way. So we're going to go ahead and do a larger burl today. In all those comments, one of the prevailing suggestions was that I did a cherry burl but filled all the voids. Cherry burls always have lots of voids. And I've never tried it. I am listening to you guys and I want to show you what you want to see. So today that's what we're going to do. I know we're going to end up with some voids. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this into a nice shape and fill all the voids and see what it looks like, because frankly I'd like to see what it's going to be like as well. I'm going to get this between centers, so I've got to get past the bark and be able to secure this to the lathe safely. This burl probably weighs just barely under 25 pounds. It's very hefty, so I'm hoping, yeah, except for this, of course, which I'm just now realizing. I'm hoping that there's some really good solid material in here and it's not rotten all the way through. But again, no way to know unless we try. Faceplate, at least for my comfort level, for sure with this piece. I do not want this thing flying off on me. And see if we can get this rolling. Big hunky piece, but exciting. Getting past the bark is always a bumpy ride. And just made sure my half-inch bowl gouge was nice and sharp a few times, and trying to get past all this bark and see if I can get to solid wood. This blank was actually a lot more balanced than I thought, considering just the size of it. I think a lot of it had to do with the thickness was pretty uniform. So this measured about 15-16 inches by 15-16 inches and about 7 or 8 inches thick. So I'm hoping that I can get past what might be some cherry burl rot and nastiness and get down some nice solid material and be left with something that I can give away and be proud of. The whole goal of this today is to, as I said earlier, to see if I can get it into a nice shape, and whatever voids are left, we'll go ahead and fill. And I'll show you how I've chosen to do that today, maybe a little unconventionally. And again, it's just, kind of in my head, so I don't know how it's going to work out. This is a first for me for sure. But as I'm doing this, I'm seeing, boy, oh boy, there's a lot of voids. And, but I guess that's what I signed up for, right? Want to establish a nice tenon. I hope that I've got some good solid wood, and it's looking very promising at this point. Just had to kind of go in a little bit, and there was some good material that was not rotted or punky or anything. So far so good. That's a huge plus. We'll mark off for the tenon itself. I went for a little bit of a larger tenon. I know I'm going to have my jaws a little bit wide, but I've found on heavier pieces that if I put it, when I turn it around in the chuck, if it's on a small tenon, it just doesn't feel as secure. Really pleased so far that there's a real good amount of solid material, of course, minus those big cracks and bark inclusion voids, but feeling good, feeling confident right now. Try to start working toward a shape. I'm not really sure what I want to do at this point, but just kind of stop, pause, look at what the blank is giving me, and a lot of times that really dictates very much. Those of you who do turn, you know that dictates very much what you choose to finish up with as far as shape goes. So I've decided to kind of bring it in at the bottom a good amount, and leave the outside, or excuse me, the top kind of as wide as I can. I don't want to lose a whole bunch of size of this blank unless I have to, but kind of feeling this will be a nice shape at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and get the that outside corner smoothed down a little bit just to emphasize the shape. But again, trying to keep this blank as large as I can. I think I might actually end up with a nice size piece when all is said and done. I'm going to go ahead and get some sandpaper on it now and start smoothing things out and really starting to get a picture of what we might be looking at here. I typically don't show a whole bunch of this again because I personally think it's a little boring. But I go to about 400 grit. I'm going to take just some alcohol after I'm done sanding completely and wipe off the piece real well to get any dust or any particles that might be left on here. And boy, oh boy, you know, cherry burl never really disappoints. Really, really pretty, I think. Now we're going to get that faceplate off, get it turned around, and start working on the inside. I am a little apprehensive about that one large void at this point, but again, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. We gotta go forward and see what this piece of wood gives me. Yeah, that thing's a little crazy. So I took out the pick and holy bejeebas. There's a bunch of rot in here and looked like it had almost turned to dirt. very different from obviously what I experienced on the outside with this blank. But hey, you know, is what it is. Kind of gone this far. Might as well see if I can get through. I'm actually cautiously optimistic at this point, only because the very bottom had so much nice solid material. I'm kind of thinking, well, there's no way that this thing, the rock, could go all the way through. But, you know, we'll see. Get a little bit more of the center mass material out and see if we can get our wall thickness and start establishing our depth as well. So this is, well, it's still pouring out like dirt, as you can see. But at least the void is, well, sort of looking better. Well, maybe not. Okay, hold on. Onward and onward. I mean, it is a decent, deep blank, so, you know, I should be able to go down, keep going down further and hopefully turn past this. So this is starting to feel encouraging because I'm seeing it less and less. Good news. And we'll get our depth set so I'm not too thick, but I'm also hopefully not going to go through the bottom when I take that tenon off. Now I'm starting to feel pretty good. Gamble paid off, and we've got some nice solid material past that crazy void. We still have a lot of work to do as far as filling cracks and fissures and that sort of thing, but at least I'm not contending with that monstrosity. Shear scraping toward the very end to get rid of my inevitable tool marks and also get a little bit more of the material gone. And we'll sand a little bit, again up to about 400, and keep pressing on. So this is some more alcohol. Got all the sanding done, and just you know, wipe it off really well, get all the particles gone. So we are inside the house, and I was allowed to still work inside the kitchen because it's hot outside, and but of course I had to use a beach towel and resin mold to not get in trouble. So this is milliput. If any of you have not tried it, it's awesome. It comes in all kinds of different colors. This is terracotta that I chose because I thought that it would go well with the cherry burl color. It comes in a little box, and it's like 2 cigar-shaped pieces of clay. You cut off equal portions, and you just mix it together really well, just like you would clay, and stick it wherever you want. You wake up the next morning and it's hard as a rock, ready to turn. It doesn't have the shiny, sparkly that mica epoxy resin has, but it fills things very, very well, and it is really, really solid. So try it if you haven't already. You can see all the spots around here that I filled. And now at this point, all I have to do is just get this back on the lathe and smooth it down, finish it off. I had a little bit of milliput left over, my 3-year-old grandson wanted a dinosaur egg and a dinosaur. So obviously I'll be sticking to wood turning because that's my sculpting skills. There's a picture of the milliput in case you haven't tried it. So I put this back on the lathe on the tenon, which I had done, and it was just crazy wobbly. And I realized one of the voids that I filled was right up against the foot and the tenon, so that's why it was, the chuck was not sitting nice and flush like it had been. So I've got to fix that first before that's that void I did that changed everything. I've got to fix that first before I can use the tenon. So anyway, might as well do the outside and the bottom first. And a lot of this is going to be done with the negative rake scraper. I found that if you try to just sand this, it's basically, if you've worked with epoxy resin before, it's, it would take forever because it's just as hard as conventional epoxy resin. So you've got to use some kind of a scraper or your gouge or something like that. This process went really well. I was really trying to just remove all that milliput epoxy, and I did not want to change the shape. So I bought this little thing. I can't stand when I'm sanding by hand because I tend to do a lot of that, the sandpaper gets hot. And so I went on Amazon and just bought this. I just put in palm sander. I have no idea who makes this. And boy, this thing worked great. You just stick your little 2 or 3 inch discs on there and off you go. So I'm going to go ahead and burnish it with the fine steel wool and medium Scotch pad and fine Scotch pad like I do on a lot of my pieces. And we'll put some alcohol again on just to make sure I don't have any dust or particles on there before we do any other kind of finishing products. Also gives us a nice look. I like it. I'm going to use a little bit of natural beeswax on the outside, and then I'll just use a cloth to get some heat, and this gives a terrific shine. So time to turn it around now and start working on the inside and on that rim. I had to actually fill the rim, and I'm hoping I end up with a nice solid rim because there was actually a void there. I filled it with the milliput. And I'm just taking some nice soft shear scraping cuts to get back down to a nice smooth wood surface. And I'll kind of finish up everything with the negative rake scraper again. Back to my handy dandy little palm sander. This thing is great because you can kind of press or not, you can use pressure or not. And anyway, again, just for a couple bucks, I think this thing was pretty cool. It's the first time I used it. More burnishing with the steel wool and the Scotch pads, and then we'll clean it up again a little bit before we do anything on the finishing side of things. So again, this is just alcohol, and we'll let it dry. So this is just Danish oil, and I'll do 1 or 2 coats of this. I think honestly on this one I only did 1 coat, you'll see in the finished pics it actually almost looks like lacquer. It didn't soak in a whole bunch. I think that's why it kind of stayed nice and shiny, but yeah, just plain old Danish oil. get this off and remove that tenon. I use you've seen me do it before probably, I use a vacuum chuck as a jam chuck. I don't set up the vacuum because it's already nice and true. It's attached directly to the headstock. I usually don't have to fuss and play to get the piece centered. Really, really handy. I did need to kind of make the bottom a little bit more concave so it would sit on the outside foot edges. A little more Danish oil at the end so it looks like the rest, and happy, happy. I take that nub off at the drill press and I drill out just the right size for my branding emblem. I'm going to go ahead and put that on, and that'll really be the last thing I do for this piece. If you stayed to the end, thank you, thank you. I've got some really pretty finishing pics coming up. Please stick around for those. Smash that notification bell so you know when other videos are coming out. It's the best way to support me for free, and it's much appreciated. Really, thank you, and appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time. Well, good morning. Today I've got a beautiful piece of poplar. You can see it's got this terrific slant already. I'm intending to leave this as the top and see if we can form a nice shape that keeps this whole line going. But it's got gorgeous coloring. Really looking forward to getting into it to see what's inside. I've never turned poplar before, so this will be a first. And anyway, let's get it on the lathe and see what we've got. You can see that I've already kind of taken it to the drill press and used a Forstner bit to drill in so I can put my center, put it between centers safely. But anyway, here we go. So first order of business, we're going to get this safely between centers and start getting it into round. So I quickly realized from the very beginning that as much as I got this into round, because of that very angled shape on the top, that basically this was going to wobble to a good degree throughout this whole turn. So I just kind of resolved that fact. But it was a little unnerving. But again, kind of what I signed up for. So the grain on this was just beautiful from the very beginning, and the shavings that were coming off, it looked like black walnut, and really surprised me. So we're going to start getting a tenon established. This is a little bit of a chunkier, heftier blank, so I'm using a little bit larger-ish tenon because I don't like having the smallest tenon I can on slightly heavier pieces. Now that we've got that foot on there and I kind of know how much I feel I can go in, I'm going to start defining the shape. And yeah, wow. I mean, the figuring on this blank was incredible. So I've got a real specific shape in mind, and I'm hoping I can accomplish it at this point. As I was working toward the top, as you'll see when the lathe pauses for a moment, that top sapwood was really, really punky, and I know that I'm going to have a few issues with that. Just going to keep working at it and trying to define the shape and getting it to where I'm comfortable, what I was picturing in my mind. Starting to come together and starting to feel good about it. Hopefully I can kind of keep it going and that top sapwood doesn't make things difficult. So I've never done a shape like this with the exaggerated top edge. So getting this hollowed out is going to be, I think, a bit of fun. Starting to stabilize the top a little bit with some CA glue and seeing if I can get it to be a little bit more of a solid surface. Gonna start my initial sanding here and see if we can get a nice smooth surface and feel good about turning it around. Little handy dandy palm sander that I like a lot so I don't feel the heat from the sandpaper. This is just a little bit of alcohol to clean off all the dust and raise the grain and also give us a nice first look. Kind of burnish the surface as I do a lot with smoother projects with the fine steel wool and be like a medium Scotch pad and a fine Scotch pad. Going to go ahead and put some Danish oil on the outside here to kind of really see what we're looking at. And so far so good. I'm feeling pretty good. Love this stuff already. I wish I had some more. So let's get this turned around now, get it secured in the chuck so we can start the hollowing process and kind of see how that goes. going to take the bulk of the center out with a Forstner bit or two and see if I can save a little time and have a little bit more control entering the center, being that it is kind of obviously wonky. I opted to not start with my bowl gouge and just kind of take very straight passes with the square carbide to reduce and eliminate some of this interior material. Starting to get a little worried though too, because I know I marked the center, but when I am hollowing this out, I really am looking at a off-center hole, and I'm wondering how this is going to turn out at this point. Hopefully I didn't mess things up. So as this went on, the hollowing process, the more I opened it up, the more it seemed that, okay, the center hole's not going to really be off center. Again, this sapwood, the bane of my existence at this point, trying to use some very thin CA glue to stabilize it, let it sit for a bit. It was smoking like crazy. I had my respirator mask on through all of my turnings, and I realized that the respirator was sucking in, because it has built-in filters, it was sucking in the smoke and burning my eyes. Anyway, had to do that gluing without the respirator. That was no fun. I think we may be past the worst of that, I hope, at this point, and I'm gonna start getting the wall thickness where I want it to be, and also try to establish my depth and try not to mess up the shape that I'm looking to have. Again, more CA. Thought I was done, but not. Going to start working some sanding now and seeing if we can get to a finished piece. I wanted to keep the outside edge natural as possible. Yeah, this did actually work out, but I don't recommend doing what I just showed you on video. I did get a couple banged up knuckles, and it's just not a great idea. I need to get an extender on my sander so I can reach inside hollow forms like this. So I'm going to get the tenon off, tenon off now, and I use a vacuum chuck as a jam chuck, and I find that it gives me a lot of stability because it's directly mounted to the headstock, and I don't have to worry about truing it up. Once I get this nice and concaved on the bottom and my foot set, I can take this to the drill press, and I'll eliminate that little nub with just the right size Forstner bit to put in my branding emblem. Opted not to do the branding emblem because there was no way to take it to the drill press and have this thing sit flush. So a little more Danish oil, and I think we're gonna not push our luck. I really was pleased how it came out, especially my first attempt at something like this. Please stick around for the after pics and smash that notification bell. It's the best way to support me for free. And thank you so much for watching again. Take care. Well, hello everyone, welcome back. Today we have a gorgeous piece of black walnut. This is from a tree that came down on my property during Hurricane Helene. I've already found center on this on both ends, and I'm kind of putting it right in the center of the pith so I can take advantage of as much of that heartwood. It does have a pretty decent little check on this one end, so I think we're going to make that the bottom and see what we need to do with it. But beautiful stuff. I've got something real special planned, and let's get at it. Going to get all this bark removed, get this down to a nice trued up cylinder as kind of first order of business. Sorry about my shoulder being in the shot there, folks. Want to establish a tenon so we can get this in a chuck and secure it a little bit better on the lathe. Truing everything up so we can pick up the speed a little bit, and makes it a lot easier to make good clean cuts where you can go a little bit faster. So I wanted to get past a lot of this sapwood, and hopefully with this whole piece just be left with the heartwood. This would be the second piece I've taken off this downed tree, and it's lovely. The grain is beautiful. So I'm gonna try to do it justice here. Starting to kind of define my initial shape. Steamy, dusty fun. Getting the Forstner bits in there. So if you're going to try a goblet or a chalice like this, you definitely want to try to almost finish the what will be your goblet portion of it before you take a bunch of bulk or weight off of the stem and that sort of thing, because you kind of don't want to go back to this portion here without after taking a lot of that weight off and making a thinner stem, that sort of thing. Sanding up a bit and defining the shape a little bit more. We're going to do a captured ring on this one. That's what that centerpiece is going to be. And in a perfect world, I would have had a little bit longer of a log. It would have given me a little bit more room to move around, but hopefully it works out. I want to make the ring itself a little smaller. And we'll start getting some of that bulk off in the middle. So yeah, that's why you learn to use tailstock support and don't get ahead of yourself. Luckily, it didn't do a whole bunch of damage, mostly just to my pride. Just using a skew to kind of get that radius on the outside of the goblet a little cleaner, and also what will be the ring, rounding that off right now just to kind of finish that before I part it off. I'm going to go ahead and part off this ring now. And I don't have the fancy tool, so I used a detailing carbide tool. And worked out fine. Now we're going to tape this out of the way so we can kind of work on the top portion of the stem. start to sand and finish this portion, and then the idea would be to take the ring and tape it onto the other end and finish the bottom. But first things first. Using the fine steel wool and the Scotch pads that I like a lot to burnish the outside, give it a nice smooth surface before we do any kind of abrasive paste or anything like that. Speaking of abrasive paste, time to move that ring and be able to start working on the bottom portion of the goblet. This tape did not want to stick once you use the like the abrasive paste and that sort of thing. Little tailstock support, always a good idea, as he reminds himself. So we're going to part off so we don't have as thick of a base. I just usually make a little bit of a line so I know where that's going to be, and then I'll kind of do all my finishing. We need to sand the inside of that captured ring, and I saw somebody much smarter than me do this, and worked out great. So we put some sandpaper on the stem itself, and allows you to sand the inside of that ring. Works out great. We'll kind of repeat the same process with the steel wool and the Scotch pads, and then we'll use some more of the Axe abrasive paste as well. So I did another goblet a bit ago, and it was out of redbud. If you've seen the video, maybe you did. That one and this one are going to go as gifts for my sister and her soon-to-be husband at their wedding. And I hope they like them. So this is just some Danish oil at the very end, just to kind of give it a nice shiny coat, and finish the piece off. I really appreciate everybody who stuck around to the end, and thank you so much for watching. The after pics are going to be coming up pretty soon, so stick around for those. And best way to support me for free is to hit that notification bell as you subscribe, so you know when new videos are coming out. It lets YouTube know that you might be mildly interested in this kind of content. So thank you if you've already done that. Take care, everyone, and I will see you next time. Well, hello everybody, welcome back. Today I've got a massive cherry burl. This is actually the largest one I've gotten my hands on. My intention today is to keep this as natural as it comes, cracks, voids, and imperfections and all. I've got to get it over to the bandsaw and get some of the limb trimmed out of it. So basically all we have is cherry burl. I'm really excited. Let's get it going. Definitely got to put a faceplate on this, and because this is about a 35-pound hunk of burl once I got that branch out of there, and definitely want to make sure I keep it on the lathe. Just getting this thing on here was no small thing. Definitely wobbly, off balance. That one side that's very thick and it's got that big bulbous portion of the burl there. It's going to be an issue. So what I did was I took it to the bandsaw and I took that front portion off. This one is going to be another project I will save for later. Otherwise, all of this beautiful burl right here would end up on the floor, and that would be a complete waste. I think this will be a lot more manageable, and it's still a really large piece. Now starts the long road of truing this up. Tried not to include too much of the footage of truing this up because it did take quite some time, but look, that's part of the process, and I guess if you're bored you can fast forward a little bit, but this is what it's all about. This thing actually kind of got in shape a little quicker than I anticipated, but I could not take the speed up over 500 RPMs. So knowing that this is going to be a long turn for me and quite a bumpy ride. Want to try to set what's going to be my diameter, and again I want to leave this as large as I can since I have such a nice large blank, and 100% of what I have here is burl material, so I want to save as much as I can but still get a nice shape on it. Going to start flattening off that bottom and get a tenon put on there. I prefer, especially with heavy pieces, working with a tenon rather than a recess, just personal preference. It seems that the wood can be held tighter, stronger, when you're squeezing the chuck in on a tenon, compressing the wood rather than expanding it out with a mortise or a tenon or a recess. Again, just personal preference. I think I have enough for a decent tenon to fit into the chuck. Starting to see some rot in this, but again, my intention is to keep this as natural as possible today, and my attitude is kind of, it'll be what it'll be. Already seeing some amazing grain pattern, which not surprised. Starting to get to what will be my final shape. And I really wanted to kind of bring the bottom in a little bit more to make it a little bit more attractive and to make sure this thing wasn't so dang heavy when you pick it up. Moisture content on this burl was around 20-22%, so I wouldn't call it wet, but it definitely had some moisture to it. When the shavings came off, they were cool to the touch. I'm going to start sanding, and again, we'll take this up to about a 400 grit. This is just some alcohol to clean the grain before we do anything else. Now we're going to put some Danish oil on, and this will serve as our finish coat. I might do a couple coats of this, but typically I just do one and just let it be. That hole there was actually a branch that was going into this, and it was completely rotted and mush inside there. So I'm thinking that when I open this up and hollow it out, that I'll have a little bit of a window there. We'll see. I did off camera take some of the Danish oil and use a little brush and get into all the voids with the oil. So gonna get the chuck on here now. I use the tailstock to get it on there as straight as possible while it's still mounted a lot of times, and I find that when I flip it around like this and then put it on the headstock, I have a much more centered piece rather than holding it and pressing it against the chuck and trying to tighten it down. Still really surprised how heavy this was, just flipping it around. So I'm going to try to make sure that I don't end up with a big bulky piece, but like I said, it'll be what it'll be. Flattening out the top and getting to where we can start opening this up. Really interesting when I have the outside, obviously at this point, completely trued up. I still could not take this above 500 RPM because it would literally start taking this heavy machine and shaking it back and forth, rock and roll. And this is why. There are so many voids on the inside that the mass was not distributed evenly. So again, this made it really difficult to hollow because every time you hit one of those voids, you're hitting air for a second and it bounces and it bounces and it bounces. And boy, oh boy, it's fatiguing. And like I said, it's a real bumpy ride, but worth it. I think it's okay to take away that tailstock now and start getting to what will be my finished depth and wall thickness. Those voids just kept going deeper and deeper, but that's okay. I still had a lot of thickness that I wanted to remove anyway. And at this point, I'm just kind of hoping that I can turn past it. stuff breaking off, flying around. Thank goodness for face shields. That's all I can tell you. Just got to stick at it and keep seeing what the piece will give us and what's going to be inside. Yeah, more stuff flying around. We'll just keep pressing forward, hoping I get down to some nice solid wood. The wood turned actually very well once, well, in the areas where it was nice and solid, which wasn't a whole lot to be honest. But I can already see I'm going to get like a nice little window where that branch was sticking through, and I think this piece is going to have a ton of character to it. Negative rake scraper to kind of smooth things out, get rid of some of my tool marks, and get us ready for sanding. Also, a little round carbide tool to get a little bit extra bulk out there because the sides toward the bottom are a little on the thick side. We'll get this sanded up, again, same as we did on the outside, to about 400, and see about finishing this piece off. We're going to put some alcohol on it just like we did on the outside, just to clean the grain, get all the dust gone, and get us ready for oil. This is Danish oil again. Just crazy, the patterns and the grain patterns in these burls are just amazing. Every one is different, but they're all so beautiful. Time to turn this around. I put it on a vacuum chuck, used it as a jam chuck to get rid of this tenon. And we'll finish off that bottom next. There was some nice solid material down here, so this was actually one of the simpler portions of this turn because I wasn't getting beat up and bounced around by voids and big cracks and stuff like that. Make sure that it's concaved and so it sits on the footwell, and we'll sand things up a little bit and finish it off the same way that we did the rest of the piece. I took it over to the drill press and I drilled out that little nub and I made it just the right size for my branding emblem. So we'll put that on next, and we can call this one finished. Best way to support me for free, if you haven't done it already, when you subscribe, click that notification bell so you know when the videos are coming out. And the algorithm loves that, and it lets YouTube know that you're possibly mildly interested in this content. So this piece turned out to be a little over 12 inches across and a little bit more than 6 inches in depth or in height. Nice big piece. It's going to be looking great on the kitchen island. Thank you so much for the support, everybody, and thank you for watching. Stick around for the after pics. They're coming up next. Welcome back, everyone. Today I have something I've never turned before. This is carob. It's a beautiful little blank and gorgeous red color. I'm really anxious to see what's inside, and let's get at it. This piece only measured about 5 inches by 5.5 inches by 4 inches wide. So we're going to be doing something a little on the smaller side, but I'm hoping that this is going to have a really beautiful finish to it once we get to the sanding portion and everything. So anyway. My high-tech template for tenons and mortise. This is a very hard wood. Again, it's one of the reasons I'm hoping that we'll get this will turn out to be a really pretty finish. But it turned remarkably well. Didn't fight me at all. But anyway, starting to get a little bit of a shape going here, and more importantly, we're starting to see what this wood actually looks like. This was actually very pleasurable wood to work with. I found that as long as the tools are sharp and take it nice and slow, it was very easy to get very clean cuts and clean lines. So it was very satisfying. So my mother casually mentioned that she would like a little something that's very pretty just for her desk. And so believe that's the home that this is going to be going to, provided that it comes out nice. Don't want to disappoint my mom. Time to get some sandpaper on it and see what kind of a finish we are left with, and we'll move forward from there. We're going to take this up to about a 400 grit, and then we'll also burnish it with the steel wool and the Scotch pads. I won't show you a bunch of the sanding, but you get the gist. It's very, very fun watching this as it got smoother and smoother. Anyway, again, very, very satisfying when you actually get a real pretty and a good quality piece of wood. Burnishing is done, and yeah, it's looking very nice. We're going to get some alcohol on this just to clean it up a little bit, get all the dust gone, gives us a nice first look. Really impressed with this wood. I'm going to definitely see if I can get myself a few larger pieces. Turn it around the chuck, and I'm going to use a Forstner bit to get some bulk out of the center. I'm not planning on using tailstock support, so I'm going to be real careful on my hollowing. I like this technique when it's appropriate, just a nice straight push with the square carbide tool. Really easy way to get the most of the bulk out before you start doing some fine hollowing, and the pressure goes in toward the headstock and not side to side, so it doesn't risk really so much the coming out of the chuck. Going to start working with the round carbide tool just to work on the inside radius, see if we can get that to match the outside, and get some sandpaper on it now and start smoothing it out like we have done the outside. That inside rim was really, really sharp. I just tend to not like that feel, so I always tend to smooth that out, make it pleasant to pick up. It's the sort of thing that all of us wood turners, I think, would agree we like it when people pick up our pieces and you can tell it's comfortable for them to hold. little alcohol like we did on the outside to clean up the dust. The last thing we'll do is, as far as the turning goes, is we'll eliminate this tenon. I'll take this down to a nub and remove that at the drill press with a Forstner bit just the right size for my branding emblem, so I don't have to deal with trying to make that nub really small or take it off on the lathe. So I'm using the Burl buffing system. I thought I would do that rather than, because this is such a nice hardwood and it already wants to be glossy, I thought I would do that rather than just straight Danish oil like I typically do. And you'll see in the end, I'm really glad I did it this way. The last wheel that we will use and the last product we'll put on there, that number 3, is carnauba wax. I think when the wood allows, I'm going to use this a little bit more because it's kind of fun, satisfying watching it shine up. Stick around for the after picks, and please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I really appreciate your support, and thanks again for watching. I will see you next time. Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be working with this beautiful, nicely dried out, good-sized cherry burl. You'll notice that the bottom of this is nice and solid, so I'm really hoping that it doesn't have a tremendous amount of voids, but we do have some things to consider. We've got one side that's real low, one side that's real high. You can kind of see it a little bit better this way. So there's no way I'm going to turn it as one single piece. I would just end up putting so much of the burl on the floor. So I'm going to work with this larger, higher side today. And I think what I'm going to do is kind of cut it right around here, trim this off, use this piece here for another project and for another day, and just concentrate on this bigger piece here. But anyway, let's get to it. I'm excited to see what's inside, and here we go. First thing, just my very high-tech template that I use to before I do any kind of trimming, to kind of see the space that I want to work with. And I'm going to use a Forstner bit to drill past the bark so I can get a nice connection with the lathe. So my intention with this is to do a live edge piece. So this area here will be the bottom, and all that bark area will be the top of my piece. Just flattening off the bottom, and I'm going to start establishing a tenon here as well. So far so good, as far as not a tremendous amount of voids. There are some very large wormholes though. So I'm going to start working on bringing these bottom corners in and start working toward a shape. I checked this burl and it was about 7% moisture content, so nice and dry. It's one of the pieces that I got from a gentleman who was moving, and he was a turner, obviously, and he had so many beautiful blanks in his shop, and he just didn't want to move them all. But this is one of the ones that had been sitting for, you know, maybe 20 years, according to him, or so. But anyway, no moisture, nice and dry. A little shear scraping to help me refine the shape, and trusty old skew to smooth things out a little bit. Going to start to get some sandpaper on it and get to a point where we can finish the outside. It wasn't super easy because once I went toward the top, because it's such an irregular shape, I had to do all of that with the lathe off because it would beat the heck out of you if you tried to sand or anything toward the top. Gonna go ahead and put a little alcohol on here just to clean up everything before we go any further. Make sure that the piece is nice and clean, get all the dust gone, that sort of thing. Gotta love a cherry burl. These things are so pretty. Time to get it turned around and get that tenon in a chuck so it's securely on the lathe, and start working on hollowing out the inside. So when you're working past any of the burl bark like this, just make sure your tool is very sharp, obviously, and just really take your time. When the outside or the top is so irregular like this, it's always kind of stressful for me to decide how thick or thin to try to make the walls. Don't want a real heavy bulky piece, but you also don't want to compromise the integrity knowing that you could come up with a big void at any time. So stopping a lot and checking and seeing where I want or need to be. We're kind of getting to the point where I need to get that tailstock gone, but I try to keep that up as long as possible so it's as safe as possible. We don't want this thing flying off. Remove the tailstock now and we'll get rid of that center portion that was used for support and start really refining the inside wall thickness and shape. At this point I'm kind of feeling like that's as much as I'd like to go as far as the thinness of the walls. So we'll just start removing the interior bulk, get that material gone, and start cleaning everything up. So again, so far so good. No big voids or surprises. It's still a cherry burl, so it's going to have its share. But all in all, this piece was very solid inside and out. Use that negative rake scraper to smooth out the inside and get rid of tool marks and get us ready to sand. I'll show you a little of that, and but not a whole bunch. And took it up to about a 400 grit. I'll burnish the inside with the steel wool and the Scotch pads. And time to put some alcohol on to clean it up and get all that dust gone. There's only so much that compressed air can do. And this cleans things up very nicely and dries really quickly. So we'll get this turned around. I had a couple comments, people asking if I would elaborate a little bit more on the vacuum chuck that I use as a jam chuck a lot of times. The vacuum chuck is just like a jam chuck. It's got this soft foamy portion on the front that can sit right against your piece. That attaches to the headstock, and you would normally put a tube in the back and set the vacuum on, so it's kind of sucking the piece onto there. But I just use it as a jam chuck, and because it attaches perfect and true every single time to the headstock, and I just find it easier to use than a piece of wood. So anyway, let's get this tenon gone and finish off the bottom, and we can wrap this piece up. I'm going to finish this off the same way I did the rest. I'm going to sand it probably to about a 400 grit, and I'll even burnish it with the Scotch pads and steel wool. Big old wormhole on the very bottom there. Lovely. So I was very pleased that this piece did not have a tremendous amount of voids. So time to put the branding emblem on and get some Danish oil on it and call this one a day. This is just a little light brown tinted Danish oil. I like how the little tiny bit of color in the oil brings out the color of the wood. I really appreciate all the support from everybody as always. Best way to support me for free is to hit that notification bell when you subscribe. That helps me more than you know. Please put a comment in the bottom. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you would do different. And again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Stick around for all the after picks. Those are coming up in just a moment.